When I first bought that stretch of land by Lake Marin, nobody paid attention. It was a scrubby wedge of woods, some reeds, a half-collapsed boathouse, and 2 deer paths that led nowhere. I bought it for the quiet, 20 acres of forgotten shoreline the county maps labeled unimproved. My idea of improvement was a hammock and a canoe. 5 years later, I was out there staining the deck when a convoy of white SUVs rolled by on the newly paved road that definitely hadn't a T existed when I moved in. I remember thinking, that's odd. Who paved a road through my property? The next morning, there were survey stakes with fluorescent ribbons cutting across my driveway like birthday streamers. I followed them and discovered a construction site sprawling out of the tree line. Bulldozers, foundations, the hum of generators, and a big banner fluttering from a portable office. Welcome to Marin Shores, 120 new homes by Horizon Development Group. I stood there with my coffee halfway to my lips and muttered, on whose shores? After 2 weeks of trucks, shouting, and dust, a man in a hard hat came knocking on my cabin door. He introduced himself as the site foreman and asked me politely to move my fence a few feet back because it was encroaching on the HOA's buffer zone. I told him very calmly that the fence marked the middle of my property. He chuckled and said, "Oh, that's cute. Our legal team already cleared this area with the county." I handed him my deed, a coffee-stained folder I kept in a drawer, and said, "You might want to double-check that before you pour any more foundations." He glanced at it, looked confused, and said, "This can't be right. This tract's part of Phase 3 of our development." I smiled. "It's part of Phase Me." 2 hours later, an SUV with tinted windows pulled up and out, stepped a woman in heels far too fancy for a construction site. She introduced herself as the HOA's acting president. Her tone had that practiced warmth people use when they think they already own the room. "Mr. Cole," she said, "there's been a misunderstanding. The development's been approved for months. If your cabin happens to be on our future greenbelt, we can offer relocation assistance." I asked what that meant. "A generous check," she said, "to help you move somewhere less transitional." I told her the only thing transitional was her understanding of geography. Then I opened my laptop and pulled up the county plat maps. There it was in crisp black lines. Parcel 47A, the same 20 acres I'd bought 6 years ago, right under the entire center of their subdivision. She blinked at the screen, then at me, then smiled like she'd bitten a lemon but wanted to pretend it was candy. "Our title company must have overlooked something," she said. By the next week, the HOA's lawyers were emailing daily. They insisted their developer had constructive ownership because they'd already invested millions in infrastructure. I sent back a polite note that said, "Construct all you want. Ownership isn't contagious." Meanwhile, houses kept rising, dozens of them, because construction schedules apparently move faster than legal research. By the time the first buyers moved in, the developer had paved roads, built docks, and landscaped a lakeside park, and all of it sat neatly within the property lines of Parcel 47A. The new residents didn't know. They just saw a cabin by the lake with an eccentric man who waved from his porch and sometimes paddled past their fancy new boathouses. Then the HOA sent me a letter. It began with, "Dear Sir, you are hereby instructed to cease using the community lake access without authorization." I framed it, right next to the county deed that said the entire lake access was mine. Still, I played along. I went to their first HOA meeting, held in a half-finished clubhouse smelling of fresh paint. The president was there again, the same lemon-smile woman now backed by a board of residents who looked more anxious than angry. When she recognized me, her eyebrows did a little panic dance. "Mr. Cole," she said, "this is a private meeting for homeowners only." I replied, "Good news, I'm your landlord." She laughed once, realized I wasn't joking, and said, "That's absurd." So I set my folder on the table, flipped to the survey map, and pointed. Everything from this line to the lake, including the marina, the park, and this clubhouse, sits on Parcel 47A. That's me. Silence. Just the hum of the air conditioner and someone's nervous cough. Finally, one man said, "So, what does that mean?" "It means," I said, You're all enjoying an extended free trial of your own neighborhood. I didn't say it cruelly. I said it like I was explaining a weather report. But their faces went pale as drywall. That night, as I walked back to my cabin under a sky full of stars, I thought about how fast people build things without looking down to see where they're standing. I knew this would get messy. They'd lawyer up, claim mistakes, beg for easements. But I also knew I had something stronger than money or muscle. A very old, very precise deed, and a plan to make it all work out on my terms. The next week, the subdivision looked like a beehive someone had kicked. Pickup trucks, clipboards, suits pacing between freshly painted houses. A surveyor's drone buzzed over my cabin twice before breakfast. By noon, IAFD received 4 certified letters and a plate of store-bought cookies from a nervous couple who just wanted to make sure we re-good neighbors. That afternoon, a new SUV rolled up, this time black with government plates. Out stepped a lawyer so polished he reflected the sunlight. "Mr. Cole," he said, shaking my hand with the measured grip of a man trained never to reveal emotion. "I'm here on behalf of Horizon Development and the Marin Shores Homeowners Association. We believe there's been a clerical hiccup." "A hiccup?" I asked. "Purely procedural," he said, unrolling a map on the hood of his car. "According to our title company, your deed references coordinates based on an outdated survey grid. When adjusted to modern GIS standards, it appears your property line ends right about..." He tapped a spot halfway between my porch and the lake. "Here." I studied the map, then him. "That's cute," I said. "Except the county assessor still taxes me for all 20 acres, and your developers are standing on half of them." He sighed like a man asked to negotiate with gravity. "Mr. Cole, our clients have invested substantial funds in community infrastructure. Litigation would be costly for everyone. Might we discuss an easement or buyout arrangement? Come back when you can pronounce trespassing," I said, and went back to sanding my deck. 2 days later, the HOA sent me another letter, this one dripping with legal perfume. They were invoking temporary community management authority to restrict unauthorized construction or occupancy within subdivision limits. Translation: they wanted me to ask their permission to exist. I pinned it next to the first letter, right under a sticky note that said, "Comedy Collection." Then I called my cousin Nora, who happened to be a real estate attorney with a weakness for chaos. She showed up in jeans, sunglasses, and a grin sharp enough to slice contracts. After one look at the paperwork, she whistled low. "They built their dream neighborhood on your land," she said. "That's not a clerical error, that's a collective hallucination." "What do we do?" I asked. "Nothing yet," she said. "Let them finish. The more they build, the deeper they dig your leverage. You can't sell them dirt until they realize they're standing in it." So we waited. Summer turned to autumn, and Marin Shores blossomed. Paved streets, streetlights, a lakeside playground, even a decorative sign shaped like a sailboat. Every nail they hammered added value to what was, legally, still my property. Occasionally, residents wandered down to my dock to introduce themselves. Most were friendly, confused that the old cabin guy wasn't part of their HOA. I didn't enlighten them. I just smiled and said, "Enjoy the lake. It's lovely this time of year." Behind the scenes, Nora was quietly registering my parcel as a limited liability company, Cole Holdings LLC, so if negotiations turned commercial, we'd be ready. She also filed a notice of ownership with the county recorder's office. Public record. Anyone searching title history would now see a flashing red flag the size of a billboard. It didn't take long for the panic to bloom. One crisp October morning, the HOA president showed up again, this time without the lemon smile. "Mr. Cole," she said, "we'd like to find a mutual solution." "Mutual sounds nice," I said. "What are you offering?" She handed me a folder, an appraisal and a purchase proposal. They wanted to buy the land beneath their marina park and clubhouse for what I'd call a polite insult. I flipped through the pages. "This covers about 10% of what you've built," I said. "How about we talk lease instead of sale?" Her eyebrows lifted. "Lease?" "Sure," I said. "You keep using the land, pay a modest annual fee. Think of it as rent for your foundation." She frowned. That's unconventional. So is building a subdivision on someone else's property. She promised to take it to the board. A week later, a letter arrived, this one much friendlier. The HOA appreciated my cooperative spirit, but declined the lease option. They'd pursue alternative legal remedies. I poured myself a coffee, called Nora, and said, "Time to spring the trap." She laughed. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" "Just admiring the architecture," I said. That night, we filed notice of trespass and a demand for vacate against Horizon Development and the HOA, effective in 30 days unless a formal land use agreement was reached. We didn't expect them to move a single brick. We just wanted a paper trail. By mid-November, the story hit the local news. Developer accidentally builds 120 homes on private land. The headline was pure oxygen. Reporters called, neighbors whispered, and property law professors had a field day on talk radio. The HOA tried damage control, claiming I'd manipulated outdated maps. I responded by inviting a county surveyor to walk the boundary line on live television. When the surveyor's GPS pinged right through the middle of their shiny new clubhouse, the HOA president nearly swallowed her microphone. After that, my quiet lake became a circus. News vans parked under my pine trees, drones hummed over the rooftops. Horizon Development froze all pending sales, and the HOA meetings turned into shouting matches. Through it all, I just kept fishing. Every cast into that smooth water felt like punctuation at the end of a sentence only I understood. By December, my mailbox was a museum of legal stationery, thick envelopes, embossed letterheads, and not one of them containing a Christmas card. Horizon's lawyers were scrambling. Their investors were nervous, their buyers furious, and the county planning board was suddenly reviewing permits. The subdivision that had been Marin Shores now looked more like Marin Panic. One cold morning, I was sipping coffee on my porch when I saw a convoy of 3 black SUVs crawling up my gravel drive. Out stepped the developer himself, David Carrington, a man who looked like he'd been born wearing a suit. He smiled like someone who'd practiced in mirrors. "Mr. Cole," he said, "you've certainly made an impression." "I try," I said. He gestured toward the neighborhood. "Beautiful place, isn't it? A real community. I'd hate to see it torn apart over a misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding?" I said. "That's a creative word for large-scale trespassing." He ignored the jab. "We'd like to make you a serious offer." He opened a folder and slid a document across my porch railing. I glanced at the number. 7 figures. Not bad. But the number wasn't the part that caught my eye. It was the condition. Full transfer of title rights and mineral access, with permanent non-disclosure. "So you want me to sell and stay quiet," I said. He smiled faintly. "Everyone wins." I folded the paper neatly, handed it back. "Everyone except the guy who owns the land." He sighed, looked toward the lake. "Mr. Cole, there's a limit to patience. Horizon has resources, legal, political. You can't stop progress." "Progress doesn't usually need a permission slip from me," I said. "But in this case, it does." His jaw twitched. "You're bluffing." "Check the county recorder's site," I said. "I'm not even holding the deed personally anymore. It's under Cole Holdings LLC. You'd have to sue a company." He stared at me, then at Nora, who appeared silently in the doorway behind me like a guardian with a law degree. "I advise against threats," she said, in a tone smooth as polished granite. "They make juries sympathetic." Carrington left without shaking hands. That night, I got an email from an HOA board member, apparently one of the few still sane. He said residents were terrified they'd lose their homes. "We were told you're trying to evict us," he wrote. "Is that true?" I wrote back. "Not yet, but you might want to ask your developer who actually sold you the land." 2 days later, the same board member knocked on my door. He was holding a casserole and an apology. "We had no idea," he said. "They told us everything was approved." "Not your fault," I said. "You bought promises, not property." He frowned. "What's going to happen to us?" "That depends on whether the HOA keeps pretending they're in charge," I said. "If you and the residents form a cooperative, we can talk lease terms directly." He blinked. Lease? You'd let us stay? Sure, I said. You've all improved the land for me. Be ashamed to waste it. He left looking both relieved and stunned. The following week, whispers spread. Homeowners started comparing deeds and realizing none of their property lines matched the official county grid. They weren't homeowners. They were tenants of airspace above my dirt. The HOA's carefully groomed authority began unraveling like cheap carpet. Then came the county inspection. Nora had requested it quietly through a friend in planning. A team of surveyors showed up with tripods and clipboards, methodically mapping boundaries while the HOA board watched from the clubhouse windows like anxious owls. The final report landed like a hammer. All infrastructure, including roads, utilities, and recreational areas, constructed within Parcel 47A, legal owner Cole Holdings, LLC. The HOA tried one last stunt. They hosted an emergency community meeting in the clubhouse and invited local press. The president took the mic, voice trembling between outrage and desperation. "This man is exploiting a technicality to steal our homes," she shouted. I waited for the camera lights to warm up, then stood. "I'm not stealing anything," I said. "I bought this land fair and legal 6 years ago. Your developer ignored the records, and now you're living on my property. I'm offering you stability, a chance to stay. Rent, not ruin." You could have heard a lawn sprinkler turn off. Someone in the back yelled, "So what's the rent?" "Depends on the view," I said, which earned a few nervous laughs. After the meeting, local reporters crowded me. I gave them my best calm smile and said, "I'm not out to kick anyone out. I'm just making sure the paperwork finally matches reality." The headline the next morning read, "Man outsmarts developer. HOA accidentally rents its own neighborhood." Nora brought a copy of the paper to my porch. "You realize you're internet famous now," she said. "Guess I'll need a PR department," I said. She laughed. "You already have one! The HOA president! She can't stop talking about you." That night, the lake was still. From my deck, I could see the lights of the new homes reflecting on the water, rows of tidy little boxes glowing under the stars. They looked peaceful, almost humble. I raised my mug toward them like a toast. "Welcome to the neighborhood," I said. But in my head, the real work had just begun. The legal trap wasn't just about owning their land. It was about turning their mistake into a long-term investment that nobody could wriggle out of. Winter passed with the kind of quiet that follows a storm everyone pretends didn't happen. The Marin Shores residents hung their holiday wreaths and shoveled driveways as if they still lived in a normal neighborhood. The HOA kept sending newsletters full of cheerful lies. Partnership discussions are ongoing. Property values remain stable. Meanwhile, Nora and I were meeting twice a week at my cabin, sketching out something that looked less like revenge and more like urban planning. "If you're going to own a subdivision," she said, "you might as well manage it properly." So we drafted the Marin Lakes Community Lease Program. Fair monthly rates, maintenance agreements, lake access passes, and a promise that no one would be evicted as long as they paid rent to me instead of the HOA. In short, I was turning the HOA's empire into a rental village, one they accidentally built for their own landlord. Before rolling it out, Nora advised, "Give them hope first. People sign faster when they think they're rescuing themselves." We sent each homeowner a letter. The envelope was cream-colored, embossed with Cole Holdings, LLC, and written in plain English. It explained the situation, calmly, without legalese, and offered a 10-year renewable lease at rates lower than their current HOA fees. At first, silence. Then a trickle of replies, cautious, curious, sometimes angry. But within a month, 40 families had signed. Another 20 followed after their first HOA meeting of the new year dissolved into shouting. By spring, I had 78 leases filed and rent checks arriving like clockwork. The HOA's board looked like it was being hollowed from the inside. The president tried one last desperate email blast claiming my leases were fraudulent. Nora answered with a single sentence. "Fraud requires falsehood. Our documents are public record." After that, their communications went strangely quiet. Around April, I got a knock on my door, Carrington again, looking more tired than smug. "You win," he said. "The investors are pulling out, horizons dissolving." "I didn't realize it was a competition," I said. He gave a short laugh. You played it like one. He handed me another folder, this time not a bribe, but a proposal. Transfer of all remaining development rights, utilities, and infrastructure to Cole Holdings in exchange for full indemnity. I skimmed it. Essentially, they were offering to hand me the keys to their own disaster. Looks tidy, I said. But you're forgetting something. What's that? The HOA's still clinging to power. I don't inherit a clean slate until they step aside. He rubbed his eyes. Good luck with that. I didn't need luck. I had momentum. The following weekend, I hosted a community barbecue on the lakeshore. Free food, live music from a couple of local teens, and a big banner that read, Marin Lakes, a fresh start. About 2/3 of the subdivision showed up. People laughed, kids ran through sprinklers, and for the first time since the scandal broke, no one mentioned lawsuits. When the HOA president finally appeared, she looked out of place among the picnic tables. Mr. Cole, she said stiffly, is this sanctioned? By whom? I asked. Me? Her jaw tightened. You can't just take over governance? I'm not taking it, I said. They're giving it. Ask around. A group of residents nearby nodded. One of them, a retired teacher, spoke up. We're done with meetings and fines. Cole's offering stability. We vote to dissolve the HOA. It wasn't formal, but it was loud enough for everyone to hear. Applause rippled across the lawn. By dusk, the president was gone. By morning, an email circulated. Effective immediately, the Marin Shores HOA has ceased operations. Nora called me, laughing so hard she could barely breathe. You didn't just win, she said. You annexed them. Within weeks, the county recognized Cole Holdings as the primary management entity for the subdivision. Utilities transferred smoothly. Property tax assessments adjusted to reflect lease status. What had once been Marin Shores was officially renamed Marin Lakes Community, private, debt-free, and technically all mine. Still, I made a point to keep things fair. The rent income covered maintenance, lake dredging, and a new playground. Residents stayed, happier than ever. They started calling me Captain Cole, half as a joke, half as a salute. Sometimes walking the shoreline at sunset, I'd watch the reflection of those neat houses on the water and think about how easily control shifts, not with bulldozers or lawsuits, but with paper and patience. I wasn't rich before this, but the monthly deposits were changing that. More important, though, was the quiet satisfaction of knowing the system that tried to squeeze me had built its own cage and handed me the key. By midsummer, the scandal had outgrown the county line. Real estate blogs called Marin Lakes the subdivision that leased itself. Local news crews filmed my porch from boats, and the county board kept repeating phrases like unprecedented jurisdictional overlap. I didn't fight the attention. I curated it. Every time a reporter asked if I'd built a trap, I said, no, I bought land, and everyone else built on it. The trap was gravity. The quote stuck. It turned into memes, t-shirts, even a late-night monologue joke. Then the letters started arriving, not angry ones, but curious. Developers, investors, even a resort chain wanted to partner on future projects. Apparently being the accidental landlord of 120 homes made me look like a genius. Nora called it poetic justice wrapped in escrow. Still, power attracts paperwork. The State Property Commission scheduled a hearing to clarify ownership continuity. Translation: they wanted to know if a private individual could own an entire functioning neighborhood. Nora prepped me for every possible question. The hearing room looked like a civics textbook illustration. Microphones, flags, uncomfortable chairs. Opposite me sat two commissioners and a parade of lawyers who kept introducing themselves until the stenographer ran out of patience. One commissioner finally asked, Mr. Cole, do you intend to continue managing this community personally? I intend to keep doing what the HOA couldn't, I said. Maintain it, keep it solvent, and let people live without fines for mailbox colors. The room chuckled. Even the stenographer smiled. Another commissioner flipped through the file. According to our records, Cole Holdings has no outstanding debts, no liens, and no complaints from residents. Frankly, that's unusual. I nodded. It's easier when people know who actually owns the dirt. The decision came 2 weeks later. Ownership confirmed, title clear, management recognized. Legally, Marin Lakes was mine, and everyone else's, by lease. When the notice arrived, I carried it down to the dock at sunset, set it on the railing, and watched the light spill across the lake like molten gold. I thought about how it all started, with survey stakes and a smile that hid arrogance. How many signatures had stacked up without anyone reading the deed? That night, the neighborhood threw a party. Not an HOA event, no bylaws, no meeting minutes, just a gathering by the water. Kids roasted marshmallows, music drifted from portable speakers, and people I barely knew thanked me for saving their homes. I kept telling them they'd saved themselves by paying attention at last. The former HOA president showed up too. She'd resigned months earlier and moved to a smaller house on the other side of town. She looked different, tired, but lighter. "I came to say congratulations," she said. "You outplayed all of us." "I just read the paperwork," I said. She laughed softly. "Do you ever feel guilty?" "Only when I think about how easy it was," I answered. She nodded, handed me a small envelope, and left before I could open it. Inside was a note. "Next time you buy land, check who's mapping it." I smiled and pinned it to my fridge beside the first HOA letter, the one that told me to stop using their lake access. Over the next year, Marin Lakes settled into a rhythm. Rent checks came on time, the playground filled with laughter instead of complaints. Nora handled the accounting and pretended she wasn't secretly enjoying the fame. We even opened a tiny office by the marina, glass door, gold lettering, Cole Holdings LLC, property management. Sometimes curious visitors stopped by asking for advice. "How did you do it?" they'd ask. "Start by reading the fine print," I'd tell them. "Then don't move your fence until you're sure it's yours." Life became oddly peaceful again. The lake that had once echoed with construction noise now hummed with boats and barbecue smoke. The land that nobody wanted had become the most talked-about neighborhood in 3 counties. One warm evening, as I watched the sunset blaze across the water, Nora joined me on the dock. "So," she said, "what's next? Going to buy another forgotten parcel and see who builds on it?" I grinned. "Tempting, but maybe I'll try something different." "Like what?" "Building something on purpose this time." She laughed. "You? A developer?" "Sure," I said. "Only difference is I'll read my own contracts." We sat there as the sky turned violet, the dock creaking gently beneath us. Across the lake, porch lights flickered on one by one. My tenants, my neighbors, my accidental community. Owning their future had never really been the point. Showing them how easily people give it away, that was the lesson worth keeping. When the last light faded, I raised my mug toward the calm water. "To deeds," I said. Nora clinked hers against mine. "And to reading them." The lake carried the sound across the dark like a promise.